Hey guys, tonight we're slipping through the creaking door of a Victorian pharmacy, the kind nestled between a lamplighter's post and a chimney sweep's root, where glass bottles line the shelves like soldiers and the air is thick with the smell of camphor rosewater and just a hint of arsenic. The gas lamps flicker softly above you, casting golden halos onto the gleaming marble countertop, while behind it, a pharmacist in a high collar and ink-stained waistcoat polishes a set of brass scales like he's preparing for an alchemical ritual. It's quiet, eerily so. No music, no fluorescent hum. Just the ticking of a wall clock and the muffled clatter of a mortar and pestle from somewhere in the back. And you, tired traveler, are here because you can't sleep. Again, you've tried the chamomile tea. You've turned your pillow over 6 times, and you've already counted more imaginary sheep than there are stars in the sky. So now, you're about to trust your twitching eyelids and your precious REM cycles to a place where insomnia is cured with mercury, leeches, or a nice warm mug of opium. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere special, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far this sleepy little journey travels. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step inside and the bell above the door gives a delicate jingle. The pharmacist greets you with a stiff nod and a barely restrained smirk. If he's already decided what's wrong with you, trouble sleeping, I imagine, he says, not really asking. You don't answer right away. You're too busy scanning the shelves, mesmerized by names etched in gold leaf on green glass. Tinct, Opie, Pulv, Doveri, Elix, Paregoric. They look like magic potions from some children's book. But most of these will absolutely knock you out or kill you, sometimes both. Behind the counter, there's an enormous apothecary cabinet filled with little drawers, each labeled in flowing script. One says Mandragora, another Nux Vomica, and a third simply reads ZZZ. You want that one? You really want that one? As you sit, the pharmacist begins his assessment the old-fashioned way. He watches. Are your eyelids twitching? Are your hands trembling? Are you pale, flushed, anxious, or just British? Because in the Victorian era, even your posture could be a symptom. He opens a logbook that smells faintly of mildew and mercury and begins scribbling notes. He mutters phrases like nervous debility and weakened moral fiber, and you. Not entirely sure if those are medical terms or just insults. Historians still argue whether Victorian medicine was genuinely trying to help or simply enjoying its own complexity. Sleep disorders back then didn't have acronyms or numerical scales. Instead, you might be diagnosed with hysteria, melancholia, or that ever-useful catch-all, neurasthenia. That last one was basically code for you're tired and weird, but in a fashionable way. Wealthy people had neurasthenia. Poor people were just sick and told to walk it off or get back to work. Of course, you'd rather be seen as fragile than lazy. So you lean into the aesthetic. You let your shoulders sag. You sigh dramatically. The pharmacist nods approvingly. Let's see, he says. I think we'll begin with something mild. Perhaps a compound syrup of lettuce, valerian root, and a little extract of wild lettuce. You pause. Did he just say lettuce twice? Yes, he did. Because in the Victorian era, lettuce wasn't just for sandwiches, it was a legitimate sedative. Rich in lacticarium, a milky fluid extracted from certain types of lettuce, it was known as lettuce opium. It probably didn't do much, but at least it wouldn't kill you. Still, you eye the bottle skeptically as he pours a spoonful. It's thick, cloudy, and smells like bitter salad water. You sip and immediately regret it. The taste is somewhere between celery-flavored cough syrup and whatever sadness feels like in liquid form. That'll take the edge off, he says. Spoiler, it won't. You scan the pharmacy again. The shelving is categorized in delightful yet deeply confusing ways. There's a for women-only shelf that includes both lavender, water, and chloroform. There's a section titled Night Terrors, where you spot a tin labeled dried pigeon heart, ground which is either a homeopathic remedy or a threat. On one of the higher shelves is a bottle with a tiny dragon carved into the glass and a handwritten tag that simply says, "Sleep." You point to it. "Ah," the pharmacist says, his voice lowering. "That one's special. Imported from the East Indies. A combination of nutmeg oil, opium tincture, and just a whisper of mercury chloride. Very effective, but we tend to save it for the unmanageably wide-eyed." You blink a little too fast. He smiles. He places a smaller vial in your hand. It's warm, despite the cool room. You swirl it, watching the slow-moving liquid slosh like molasses. The pharmacist explains that some believe the opiates in it not only sedate the body, but quell the wandering soul. A theory supported by a fringe spiritualist named Dr. Elias Crum, who also claimed that dreams were echoes of past lives poking through. He later died of tincture poisoning, but you have to admire the poetry. You're ushered to a velvet-backed bench near the weighing scale. The pharmacist begins grinding something in a mortar mix of lavender buds, dried poppies, and a pinch of asafoetida, a resin so pungent it's sometimes called devil's dung. He rolls it into a small paper capsule and hands it to you like it is a candy. Victorian insomnia cures really walked that fine line between herbalism and horror movie props. As the minutes tick by, your body begins to feel heavier. Your eyelids lower, not just from fatigue, but from the oddly comforting haze of the pharmacy itself. The ticking clock, the soft scuff of leather shoes on wooden floors, the faint fizz of something effervescing in a glass beaker, all of it conspires to cradle you like a lullaby made of chemistry and wishful thinking. You lean back. For the first time tonight, you almost feel like you could drift off. Not quite, but almost. Outside, the gas lamps sputter. A hansom cab rattles by, the sound of horse hooves echoing through the damp London mist. Somewhere in the distance, a night watchman calls out the hour. Inside, the pharmacist adjusts a bottle, straightens a label, and prepares the next concoction. And you close your eyes, just for a moment. Just until the next remedy. Your eyelids flutter open just as the pharmacist slides another vial onto the counter with the delicate clink of glass on marble. You blink, unsure if you've actually dozed off or just hallucinated the foggy street scene outside. He doesn't ask how you're feeling. He knows. You're not cured. Not yet, but you're close enough to follow him deeper into the art of Victorian diagnosis. "Let's get to the root," he says, as if he's about to pluck a turnip rather than examine your psyche. He leads you past a curtain of hanging herbs-dried chamomile, feverfew, and something that suspiciously resembles tree bark, and into a little side room. It's crammed with anatomical charts, worn leather chairs, and a shelf labeled nerves, vapors, and hysteria. A brass apparatus hums gently in the corner, and a stuffed badger perches above the fireplace. You try not to make eye contact with it. Here, you learn that your insomnia is probably not your fault. Or maybe it is. It depends whom you ask. Victorian medicine, bless it, was wonderfully indecisive. You could be diagnosed based on your posture, your complexion, or whether your dreams included too many waterfalls. You tell the pharmacist you haven't been able to sleep soundly in weeks. He nods sagely and says, "A classic case of spleen vapor. That's right, your spleen is apparently moody now." He adds, "Possibly complicated by lunar fatigue and a weakening of the spinal cord. He's just making things up at this point, right?" But no. In the 1800s, vague diagnoses were all the rage. Terms like nervous exhaustion and moral overstrain were catch-alls for just about everything. Insomnia, anxiety, sadness, indigestion, too much reading, or God forbid thinking about the future. Women were especially prone to being labeled with hysteria, a term so stretchy it could mean anything from sleeplessness to full-blown rebellion. Men, on the other hand, got melancholia or the more dignified neurasthenia. You, of course, get night pallor with restless humors. It sounds serious, but mostly poetic. Historians still argue whether these labels were real conditions or just convenient ways to explain everything doctors didn't understand. The pharmacist continues. You're likely overstimulated. The modern life, he says this while wearing a cravat and having never seen a telephone, puts strain on the cerebral tissue. He hands you a delicate pamphlet titled On the Abatement of Nocturnal Wakefulness, filled with helpful illustrations of pale figures and nightgowns pacing dramatically under moonlight. A few drawings show helpful techniques: drinking hot milk infused with nutmeg, reading one chapter of scripture, or lying perfectly still while visualizing a herd of docile oxen. Yes, oxen. Apparently, sheep were too energetic. You flip to the back of the pamphlet and find testimonials from others like you. One gentleman writes, "After suffering nightly unrest, I consumed 1 tablespoon of syrup of chloral and was unconscious by the half-hour mark. I awoke 3 days later, refreshed and missing a tooth." You're not sure whether to be impressed or terrified. The pharmacist offers you a new treatment, a gentle purgative to clear the bile, followed by a draft of soothing salts, which smell vaguely of ammonia and regret. You take them both like a good patient and feel your stomach begin to question your life choices. Sometimes the body must be unsettled, he says, before it can settle again. This sounds like something a Victorian gym coach might shout before pouring mustard oil over your scalp, but you nod anyway. Nearby, a small wooden drawer is labeled Moon Milk and Miscellany. You ask about it? He smiles, revealing a slightly yellowed set of teeth, and opens it slowly. Inside are tiny vials, each labeled with whimsical names: Sleepy Pixie Dust, Duskwater, Night Tamer's Brew. None are actually magical. Of course, just mixtures of herbal sedatives like hops, passion flower, and in one case, crushed beetle shell, supposedly for nerve realignment. You skip that one? One particularly odd recipe calls for a compress soaked in vinegar and placed behind the knees. Another involves tying a red ribbon around your left big toe because it anchors dreaming spirits. That one you consider trying. Can't be worse than the lettuce. You wonder aloud how people could believe all this. Well, the pharmacist shrugs. There were no podcasts back then. Instead, people trusted what they could smell, taste, or see in a drawing. Bottles of electric sleep oil featured dazzling lightning bolts on the label, while Calm Spirit Cordial had an angel playing a harp above a bottle of wine. Branding mattered. The more dramatic the label, the more convincing the cure. Fringe practitioners like Dr. Theophilus Griggs, who insisted that migraines and sleeplessness were caused by unharmonized foot vibrations, peddled foot-tickling machines, designed to reorient the body's ether. His methods were eventually debunked by the Royal Society, but not before he sold 700 devices and wrote a best-selling booklet titled The Soul's Know-All. You glance down at your own feet, which are currently enjoying the cool tiles of the pharmacy floor. Perhaps they do know something. At this point, the pharmacist introduces one last option. If all else fails, he says, dramatically reaching beneath the counter, we administer the Nocturne Plaster. He reveals a thin, waxy sheet infused with belladonna, opium, and a smidge of camphor oil. It's to be applied between the shoulder blades before bed. And yes, it often results in vivid hallucinations, mild sweating, and occasionally singing in one's sleep. But it does put people under. You take the plaster gently, as though it might bite. Outside, the sky has darkened further. The moon is visible now, round and indifferent. A cat screeches from a nearby alley. Somewhere, a bell tolls 10. The pharmacist begins cleaning up, humming something off-key. You remain seated, feeling oddly comforted by the fact that your insomnia, absurd as it feels, is part of a much longer, weirder human story. People have been battling the night for centuries, armed with every odd thing they could bottle, grind, or chant. And though you're still awake, you're not alone. You reach into your pocket and gently finger the vial of Night Tamer's brew. The pharmacist winks. And just like that, you're ushered out into the cool night air, a little dazed, slightly bitter tasting, and just maybe a few steps closer to sleep. You walk the fog-wrapped streets with the faint aftertaste of valerian root and vinegar still clinging to the back of your throat. The cobblestones glisten under the flickering glow of gaslights, and each echoing footstep is softened by the surrounding mist. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, half-heartedly, as though it, too, is struggling to stay awake. In your pocket, the vial of Night Tamer's brew clinks gently with each step a small, slightly ridiculous talisman against the long night ahead. The city is quieter now, the shops closed, carriages fewer, and only the occasional rustle of a newspaper drifting along the pavement reminds you that the world still turns. You pass another chemist's window, this one even older, with jars of vivid blue salts, coils of licorice root, and a pyramid of tiny bottles labeled paregoric. Ah, yes, paregoric, the Victorian mother's best friend, a mixture of camphor, anise oil, and coarse opium. It was used for everything from teething pain to colic to restless midnight tendencies. You try the door, it's open. Inside, the place smells like dried roses and damp stone. The pharmacist here is a woman in a brown gown with a lace collar and an expression that says she's seen too much nonsense for one lifetime. She greets you with a nod, then gestures to the shelves. You'll be wanting a soporific, she says. Maybe a cordial, if you've any hope left. You nod solemnly. You have exactly one hope left, and it's wearing thin. She begins to mix a potion behind the counter tiny glass beaker. Careful pours, a snip of dried poppy petal. We start with laudanum, she says, because everyone always does. And here it is, the star of the Victorian sleep world. Laudanum, equal parts tincture of opium and alcohol. You watch her swirl it into the brew with the nonchalance of someone pouring syrup into tea. This stuff was everywhere in the 1800s. You could buy it in any chemist. Keep it in your handbag, or spike your evening cordial with a dash. Samuel Taylor Coleridge wrote entire poems under its influence. Thomas de Quincey practically lived inside a bottle of it. Even respectable housewives swore by it. Sleep, tranquility, and dreams that tasted like burnt sugar and velvet curtains. What could go wrong? Historians still debate whether the widespread use of laudanum was a necessary evil or just an epidemic in fancy packaging. She hands you the glass. Sip slowly, she warns, or you'll dream so deeply you might forget to come back. You take a tentative sip. It's warm and strange, like red wine laced with perfume and shadows. Your tongue tingles, the back of your neck goes cold. You try not to imagine what it's doing to your liver. In the mirror across the room, your reflection is faint and soft around the edges. It blinks at you, and you half expect it to wink. The pharmacist leans back against the counter. We've all used it, she says, almost wistful. Even Queen Victoria kept a bottle of Godfrey's cordial in her drawer. Godfrey's cordial. Now there's a name. A syrupy blend of opium and treacle given to babies to make them sleep through the night. It was so effective that babies often forgot to wake up at all. It was eventually banned, but not before raising an entire generation of exceptionally quiet infants. You shake your head slowly. She nods back, like, yes, what a time to be alive. Around you, the walls of the shop seem to breathe. The shadows stretch a little too long. You sit on a short wooden stool and try to remember what sleep used to feel like. Not this drugged twilight, but the real kind, the kind that came with warm blankets and the soft hiss of wind against the window panes. You ask about alternatives. Oh, there's always syrup of poppies, she says, or Dover's powder. You raise an eyebrow. Dover's powder, she explains, is ipecac, opium, and something to make you sweat. invented by Dr. Thomas Dover, who also gave us the charming nickname Dr. Quicksilver, because he loved dosing people with mercury. UI, a small tin labeled Dr. Dover's Original. The font is friendly, the contents less so. Next to it sits a neatly stacked bundle of pamphlets titled Safe Sleeping for Gentle Persons. You flip one open, the advice includes such gems as avoid cheese within 3 hours of repose, and engage in light moral reflection before retiring. Right? There is also a chart outlining ideal postures for sleep, most of which involve lying as stiff as a plank with your hands crossed politely over your chest, like a Victorian Dracula. You try to imagine doing that while your cat walks across your face at 2 a.m. Not likely. The pharmacist suggests another option, tincture somni. This one is a blend of passion flower, hops, skullcap, and, because it's the 1800s, a drop or two of ether. Very gentle, she promises. Less hallucinatory than laudanum. No floating babies. You take it gratefully, chasing the taste with a sip of peppermint water. The bitterness clings to your molars. As the minutes pass, the room seems to fold in on itself, not in a scary way, just softening. The shelves bend slightly at the corners. The ticking clock slows like it's caught in syrup. You rest your head on your hand. The pharmacist moves like a shadow now, quietly tidying up her station, humming something low and wordless. There's a rustle from a back shelf. You look up to see a tiny mechanical bird in a cage twitching to life. It chirps once, twice, then settles again. For ambience, she says. You blink slowly. The laudanum or maybe the hops has finally settled into your limbs. Your shoulders feel less like wire and more like dough. The relentless nagging edges of your thoughts begin to blur. You know you won't sleep here, not yet. But you could if the floor was softer. You thank the pharmacist. She nods again, already preparing a new blend for the next lost soul who stumbles in with dark circles and twitching fingers. Outside, the mist has lifted slightly, but the streets are still deserted. You drift onward, slightly dazed, slightly soothed, and very slightly stoned. The bottle of tincture somni sits heavy in your pocket, like a promise whispered too gently to keep. And just ahead, another shop-like glows a flicker of warm amber in the Victorian night. Maybe they'll have something stronger or stranger. You keep walking. The next shop glows faintly at the corner of a narrow cobblestone alley, tucked between a milliner's window full of dusty bonnets and a tobacconist, who has long since gone to bed. The sign above the door reads, Apothecarium. Victoria in curling gilt letters, and through the fogged glass you glimpse velvet drapes. A potted fern that's definitely seen better days, and most importantly a small portrait of Queen Victoria herself presiding over the counter with a sleepy, indifferent gaze. You push open the door and a brass bell gives a soft, reluctant ring. This pharmacy is different, less clinical, more decadent. The air here doesn't reek of ammonia or dried herbs. It smells of rosewater, beeswax, and a hint of something musky, like sandalwood or an aging perfume soaked into velvet. Behind the counter stands a young man in waistcoat and cravat, carefully arranging glass jars shaped like miniature carafes. He looks up and grins. Looking for rest, he asks, or royal company? You blink, not sure which to say. Either will do, he chuckles and waves you in. Welcome to the world of royal sleep remedies, where insomnia isn't just a nuisance, it's a scandal. After all, if a monarch can't sleep, Parliament might fall, or at least cancel a garden party. He gestures toward the far wall, where several tinctures sit beneath a large engraving of Buckingham Palace. These, he says proudly, are based on court prescriptions, made for queens, lords, and anyone who could afford 2 guineas a bottle and a footman to administer it. You pick up a vial labeled elixir of valerian and balm. The label is handwritten in an elegant, practiced hand. You imagine a footman uncorking it with gloved fingers while a duchess lounges in bed, waving a lace fan and whispering that she is simply too awake to face morning tea. Queen Victoria herself, you're told. Favored tinctures of valerian root and cherry barca, surprisingly wholesome combination in an era dripping with narcotics. Her royal physician, Sir James Reed, believed that natural tonics were more befitting a sovereign lady. Though rumor has it, she once accepted a cordial laced with a touch of laudanum after a particularly long cabinet meeting. Historians still argue whether Victoria's famous stoicism was the result of strict moral discipline or a steady stream of cherry-scented sedatives. The man behind the counter shows you an old recipe book bound in leather, the spine cracked from use. Inside, scribbled notations in fading, inkless royal sleep cures. One reads, "For Her Majesty. Infusion of balm mint and powdered opium, 2 drops only, warmed by lamplight." Another entry is simply, "His Lordship refuses sleep. Increase tincture by 1 dram. Add lemon to mask bitterness." It all seems theatrical, part science, part stagecraft. But Insomnia didn't care if you wore a crown or a chambermaid's apron. At night, the mind wandered, and dreams were fickle visitors. You peer into another glass jar. Inside is a blend of dried flowers and what looks like moss. The label reads, "Queen's Repose." The pharmacist lifts it gently. Lavender, rose petals, meadowsweet, and a whisper of angelica root. He explains, "Boil in milk. Drink warm, think regal thoughts." You nod solemnly. Regal thoughts? You'll do your best. He pours you a sample. The scent is soft and heady. You sip. It's like drinking a very polite garden. The warmth spreads gently across your chest, and for a moment, you imagine a feather bed the size of a ballroom and pillows fluffed by someone with an accent and a very straight spine. Royal sleeping habits were surprisingly strict. The Queen's bedtime routine began at 10 o'clock sharp tea, brief journaling, and then to bed in a room so silent. You could hear the flames flicker in the hearth. And yet, she sometimes suffered from what she called the wakeful mind. For those nights, her physicians prescribed everything from herbal drafts to a rather chilling-sounding vaporous preparation of chloroform. Yes, chloroform. Because nothing says restful sleep like mild anesthesia. Of course, it wasn't just Victoria. The entire upper crust of the Victorian elite had their own peculiar bedtime practices. Some preferred to have their feet wrapped in flannel, steeped in gin. Others relied on footmen to read aloud from religious texts until they nodded off. And there was one duchess who insisted on sleeping inside a pyramid-shaped tent lined with copper mesh. She believed it directed sleep energy to the brain, or, at the very least, kept out rats. You wonder aloud whether these cures actually worked. Depends, the pharmacist says. On what, exactly, you're trying to escape. Some want sleep. Others want forgetting. That lands harder than you expect. You glance at a new bottle. Noctis Drops. According to the label, it was created for the Lady Adelaide, who, after the death of her dog, couldn't sleep for a month and was briefly convinced her garden statues were whispering at night. The drops contain lemon balm, tincture of lettuce, and of course just a breath of opium. Lady Adelaide later recovered and claimed the statues went back to being silent. Mostly, there's a faint breeze through the shop. A heavy curtain rustles, revealing a narrow hallway behind the counter. The pharmacist notices your gaze and smiles. Care for a peek behind the royal curtain. You follow him through. The back room is dimly lit and filled with elegant, high-backed chairs and ornate cabinets. On one wall hangs a portrait of Prince Albert, looking vaguely disapproving. Here, the most exclusive potions were made custom formulations for dukes and duchesses, typed out on letterpress stationery and sealed with wax. He points to a recipe framed on the wall. It includes crushed pearls and powdered ambergris. You blink for insomnia, you ask. He nods, for a very particular kind of insomnia. You don't ask more. There's a calm here, even with the absurdity. a strange kind of faith. That sleep can be summoned with just the right mixture of herbs, the correct number of candle wicks, and perhaps a short prayer to Queen Victoria herself. You linger a little longer. Sip another draught. Let the scent of lavender and rose drift through your head like fog over the Thames. You begin to forget what time it is. Maybe that's the point. The pharmacist doesn't hurry you. He polishes a jar, straightens a doily, and lets the silence work its magic. Eventually, you rise. He packs a small satchel for you, one vial of Queen's Repose, a pouch of meadowsweet, and a slip of paper with neat cursive. Boil gently, breathe deeply, reign peacefully. You nod your thanks and step back into the night. And as the shop door closes with a gentle chime, you find yourself walking slower, softer, like someone with royal dreams tucked beneath their collar. The night is colder now. Your breath clouds the air in little wisps as you walk. Your breath clouds the air in little wisps as you walk, and the glow of the gas lamps seems a bit dimmer, though perhaps that's just the valerian finally kicking in. You've got a slight buzz in your fingertips and the taste of rose and laudanum lingering on your tongue. It's not sleep exactly, but it's something. You pause outside another shop front. This one is less charming than the others, a narrow, cramped space wedged between a butcher and a pawn shop. This one is less charming than the others, a narrow, cramped space wedged between a butcher and a pawn shop. The sign above the door simply says Snoring Remedies and Electrical Curiosities. Inside, something crackles faintly. You hesitate. Then, because your curiosity outweighs your common sense, you push the door open. The smell hits you first. It's a sharp mix of ozone, burnt oil, and what you can only describe as overheated curtains. The shop is small and crowded with bizarre contraptions, wires, gears, coils of copper tubing. In one corner, a cage filled with sleeping pigeons. In another, what appears to be a taxidermy raccoon fitted with a brass monocle. "Ah," says the man behind the counter, looking up from a device that's currently sparking with enough electricity to raise your eyebrows. "Insomnia, I presume." You nod, carefully avoiding a swinging wire. "Welcome," he says, "to the cutting edge." This is where Victorian sleep meets science fiction, or at least, the 19th century idea of it. Here, they've given up on simple tinctures and flower teas. They're chasing the big stuff: electricity, magnetism, sound waves, and oh yes, live snakes. You make your way around the room, marveling at the sleep aids. There's a velvet helmet connected to a hand crank, said to stimulate dream energy. There's a polished wood box with a hose attached, labeled Atmospheric Slumberator Model 4, and on the far wall, a poster advertising Dr. Rothberry's Snake Sleep Systema, real product once sold, too anxious. Victorians who were assured that placing a warm live snake around one's neck would calm the nerves and promote restful dreams. You raise a skeptical eyebrow. "Oh yes," says the shopkeeper, clearly thrilled. The warmth, the gentle constriction, like a living scarf of tranquility. You decline to try the demo model. He shows you something safer. The electrosopper. It's a headband fitted with a pair of small metal nodes that rest on the temples. Delivers gentle current to sedate the cerebral cortex, he explains. Mildly uncomfortable, moderately effective. Occasionally causes hiccups. He straps it to your head before you can object. A switch clicks. You feel a soft buzzing. It's not painful, just a little tingly, like licking a battery with your brain. Your vision flickers for a moment. The floor feels extra horizontal. In the 1800s, electricity was all the rage. It was mysterious, powerful, and largely unregulated. If it could light a lamp, why not lull you to sleep? There were electric blankets, electric bath chairs, and even electric corsets. Doctors and quacks alike swore that current could pacify nerve agitation and realign brain humors. Historians still argue whether these devices were early medical innovation or just glorified party tricks. You try to imagine Queen Victoria in an electrosopper. It doesn't work. The shopkeeper unstraps you and offers a glass of something purple. Grape bromide tonic, he explains. Popular with engineers. Suppresses brain static. You sip. It tastes like chalk and cough syrup had a baby. As he busies himself with another invention, you spot something on the lower shelf. A narrow wooden box with a crank on the side and a label that reads Fonus Lumber. You turn the handle. Soft lullaby begins to play plinky piano notes and the faint hiss of wax cylinder recording. The tune is slow, oddly comforting. You'd be surprised how many people fall asleep to that, the shopkeeper says. Even more, once we remove the spoken German. This was the other frontier of sleep. Sound therapy. Victorians believed certain tones and rhythms could entrain the brain. Some musicians composed entire albums of soporific tunes, though most critics describe them as uncomfortably dirge-like. You ask about white noise. He nods vigorously. Rain cylinders, ocean drums, even a phonograph that mimics distant applause. He gestures to a device shaped like a seashell. Some people find comfort in the sound of being politely clapped to sleep. Honestly, same. In the corner of the room is a chair surrounded by copper coils. Magnetotherapy, he explains, rebalances bodily forces. Excellent for insomnia, gout, and impolite dreams. Rebalances bodily forces. Excellent for insomnia, gout, and impolite dreams. You try it. The chair is warm and hums slightly. Your teeth tingle. The chair is warm and hums slightly. Your teeth tingle. You start to feel like maybe, just maybe, you're not entirely awake anymore. The shopkeeper flips a switch. A ceiling fan begins to spin slowly above you, scattering a faint breeze. The sound is steady, rhythmic, soft. You feel that? He asks. That's sleep chasing you. You nod, dazed. He pours you a parting gift, a vial of lucid tonic, laced with trace lithium salts and cherry essence. Drink if you wake in the night, he says. May cause vivid dreams about large Victorian dogs. You leave the shop slightly buzzed, head ringing faintly, brain just a little scrambled. But in a good way, maybe? You walk on, past narrow alleys and shuttered cafes, wondering who else is awake in this strange city of half-sleep and velvet potions. And as you pass a building with ivy climbing its walls and a brass plaque by the door, you pause. The sign reads, Dr. Morton's Traveling Tonic, Company Tonight Only. Because, of course, you step inside. You step into a world of velvet curtains, flickering lanterns, and the faint sound of a hurdy-gurdy playing something vaguely Eastern European. The smell of spiced rum, lamp oil, and eucalyptus hits you like a sleepy wave. A painted banner hangs crookedly above the entrance. Dr. Morton's Traveling Tonic Company, sleep guaranteed, or you're already dreaming. The place is more theater than pharmacy. Heavy drapes part with a flourish. And suddenly a spotlight hits. Though you're pretty sure there's no electricity in here. A man emerges from behind a velvet partition, wearing a burgundy tailcoat, a silk cravat, and the kind of mustache that requires intentional grooming. He bows so deeply, you fear he might dislocate something. Ah, a weary traveler. He announces to no one in particular. Restless, twitching, plagued by the tyranny of the waking world. Worry not. For tonight, dear soul, you are in the hands of Dr. Alistair J. Morton, purveyor of peace, potioner of dreams, and absolutely not currently wanted in any official jurisdiction. You blink, he winks. And just like that, you reushered into what looks like a cross between a magician's tent and a very relaxed courtroom. There are plush chairs arranged in a semicircle, empty except for you. Shelves of colored bottles sparkle like stained glass in the candlelight. In the back, a faint humming sound of portable harmonium maybe keeps a steady drone. Dr. Morton produces a small vial with a flourish. This, he says, holding it aloft, is Sure Sleep Elixir, a secret blend of wild lettuce, opium poppy, catnip, and 3 drops of the tears of a recently retired banker. It works in under 10 minutes, or your dream state is refunded. You ask what happens if you don't fall asleep. We give you a second dose and play the harmonium slower, he says, without missing a beat. Welcome to the Victorian world of traveling medicine shows where charm, confidence, and a few props could turn a stranger into a trusted healer. These traveling tonic men were part showman, part pharmacist, and part accidental poet. They set up in empty lots, rural town squares, or on nights like this abandoned storefronts that still smelled faintly of shoe polish and damp wallpaper. Morton pours you a small cup of Sure Sleep elixir. It's the color of dark syrup and smells like cloves left too long in a cupboard. You take a sip, it burns a lot, then it tingles. Then it tastes like sweet earth and something vaguely cinnamon-y. You're not sure if it's working, but your tongue definitely feels heavier. Medicine shows sold everything from sleep tonics to lung embrocations, often making claims that stretched the limits of physics and basic anatomy. Dr. Morton gestures to a banner behind him that reads, "Cures night terrors, bedside whispers, brain twitching, and general incompatibility with pillows." You're not sure whether to laugh or cry? Instead, you reach for the complimentary wafer biscuit. Morton continues, "The secret to sleep," he says, pouring another tiny cup, "is not just chemistry. It's belief. It's surrender. It's trusting that your thoughts won't eat you if you turn your back on them for 8 hours. That hits a little too hard." He nods solemnly. People always think they can outthink insomnia. But sleep, my dear client, is not a problem to solve. It's a place to fall into. You glance around. The air is thick with incense, now frankincense, maybe, and something floral. A customer enters quietly behind you and is immediately offered a cup of Dr. Morton's deep slumber serum, which smells suspiciously like port wine and bad decisions. Every town, Morton says, has at least 10 people too proud to admit they need help sleeping. So we sneak them in under the banner of show business. He pulls out a small booklet titled The 10 Principles of Sleep Hygiene. Revise for those without bathtubs or common sense. The chapters include: don't nap while standing, remove at least one corset layer, stop reading bleak poetry after dusk, avoid argumentative cheese. You read it twice. Behind you, someone lets out a soft snore. Apparently, the harmonium worked for them. You ask Morton how much of his show is real. He grins. About 40%. Which, as far as medicine goes in this era, is wildly generous. Historians still argue whether traveling medicine men were harmless entertainers or dangerous quacks. But many agree they filled a cultural need. People wanted to be seen, to be spoken to be handed something, anything that promised relief from the cruel clock of sleeplessness. Trust is the first ingredient, Morton says. If I handed you a cup of mud and told you it would help you sleep, and you believed me, well, you'd be halfway to dreaming before the mud reached your ribs. He offers you a final cup, his triple-strength Twilight Draft. It's a mix of blue vervain, whiskey, powdered nutmeg, and something labeled hypnotic ash. You ask what that is? Tree bark. Probably, he says. You drink it because, at this point, why not? As you sit back, the harmonium fades into silence. The candles flicker lower. Dr. Morton dims the lanterns and adjusts your chair with the care of someone tucking in a beloved, slightly confused relative. You don't have to fall asleep now, he says softly. You just have to stop trying to stay awake. That, strangely, makes more sense than anything you've heard all night. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to rest. Around you, the shop breathes gentle, rhythmic, like a collective sigh. You hear the quiet clink of glass, the faint creak of an old floorboard, the hush of cloth shifting in the dark. Dr. Morton hums something low, a lullaby, a hymn. You're not sure. It trails off before you can catch it. Eventually, you stand to go. He packs you a little velvet pouch filled with dried herbs and a folded note. When the night gets too loud, boil this and whisper your own name 3 times. You don't ask what that's supposed to do. Outside, the street is nearly empty. The fog has thickened again, wrapping the buildings like old coats. You walk slowly, the tonic sloshing gently in your stomach, your feet barely brushing the stones. You're not asleep. Not yet. But something is shifting. Something is loosening. You don't even notice when the street lamps start to flicker behind you. Your footsteps sound softer now, like the cobblestones are giving up trying to hold your weight. The night is heavy with silence, broken only by the faint hiss of a faraway street lamp and the distant clatter of a coal cart. You drift past narrow alleyways and shuttered storefronts until a pale glow catches your eye blue, flickering and slightly unnerving. You follow it. The light leads you to an unusual building, tall, narrow, and curiously silent. Its windows are stained glass, glowing faintly from within, casting patterns on the street like moonlight through a kaleidoscope. A carved wooden sign swings overhead. The Institute for Rest and Reverie below it, a smaller line. For gentlefolk, troubled by a moderate wakefulness, you sigh. That's you. Inside, the air is still and cool. The front parlor is filled with velvet settees, wicker fans, and a heavy scent of lavender oil that seems to cling to the back of your throat. No bells, no theatrics, just the quiet seriousness of a place that truly, deeply wants you to lie down and shut up. A soft-spoken attendant in pale linen appears as if summoned by your yawn. "Welcome," she says. "We specialize in structured sleep immersion." You nod slowly, not entirely sure what that means. You're too tired to be suspicious. She gestures down a hall lined with curtained doors. "We begin with hypnotic suggestion and guided disassociation therapy," she says, as if that's just a normal Thursday night plan. You're led into a chamber where warm candlelight bounces gently off curved mirrors and soft, muted wallpaper. A chaise longue waits in the center, and beside it, a metronome ticks softly slow, steady, like a second heart. You lie down. You close your eyes. You listen. A voice begins speaking beside you, calm, rhythmic, soothing in that vague way that makes your brain go blurry at the edges. It's not telling you to sleep exactly, just to drift. Drift away from the thoughts that hold their breath every time your head hits the pillow. Drift from the itch in your legs and the conversation you should be ended differently 2 weeks ago. Drift from time. This is the world of Victorian hypnosis and the sleep asylum, and yes, those were real. Asylums for sleeplessness, filled not with madness, but with people who simply couldn't turn off the noise in their minds. Wealthy insomniacs with too much time, not enough light, and far too many inherited opinions. You sink into the voice. You are floating, it says. You are deeper than the air. You are heavier than your worries. Your eyelids are warm. You don't float, but you do feel thinner. Victorian physicians were obsessed with the power of the mind over the body. Hypnosis, or mesmeric suggestion, as they called it, is thought to realign the nervous system and gently convince the body it had already slept. Historians still argue whether this was genuine therapy or just extremely polite stage acting. The Institute combines these techniques with mild sedation, warm compresses, and something called ether bathing, which, judging by the scent, involves lying very still while your pores are quietly confused. A nurse arrives and rubs your temples with a thick paste made of camphor and violet leaf. You're told it coaxes the mind into reverie. You don't know what that means, but your forehead feels numb in a good way. Another person places something warm on your chest, a small linen sack filled with sand, heated and scented with nutmeg. Weighted repose, anchor, they whisper. You decide that's your new band name. You open your eyes briefly and see another guest across the room, eyes closed, breathing softly, floating in their own chaise like they've forgotten what the word deadline means. Maybe they have. Your attendant returns, holding a strange metal tube. Ether therapy, she says. Optional, you pass. Barely, she nods, unfazed, and dims the lights further. In another room, you hear faint singing, multiple voices, high and low. humming a lullaby that doesn't quite have words. Just sound drifting like fog through cracked windows. The Victorians were very into controlled environments. They believed insomnia could be cured not only by chemistry or hypnosis, but by absolute orchestration of space. That meant quiet hallways, perfect lighting, even specific wallpaper colors designed to calm the nerves. One popular shade was called evening gray. Another, more ambitious tone, pale ethereal mist. You chuckle softly, which earns you a gentle she from somewhere in the shadows. Someone wraps your hands in silk cloth, explaining it grounds your dreams. You don't argue. Your hands feel like they've disappeared anyway. The ticking metronome slows. You feel it syncing with your own breathing. Even your heartbeat seems to lean into the rhythm like a tired passenger. You think you hear someone say, "You're already dreaming," but maybe you're imagining it. Victorian dream theory was full of contradictions. Some thought dreams were psychic portals. Others believed they were digestive accidents. And a few insisted that dreams were the soul's way of remembering other lives, preferably ones with fewer corsets. One patient at a sleep asylum reportedly claimed to dream only in wallpaper patterns. Another swore she had nightly visits from a sleep dust spirit who wore slippers made of moth wings. When asked to describe him, she simply said, "He never speaks, only sighs." Your breathing is shallow now, not quite asleep. But not all here either. The silk cloth tightens gently around your fingers. Your chest rises and falls in time with the sandbag's quiet heat. The room is darker than before, but you haven't seen anyone touch the lamps. There's a draft, or maybe that's a sigh. Or maybe you're imagining that too. You drift. You feel like a paper boat in a long, still canal floating, barely touching the surface. Occasionally brushing against thoughts, but never long enough to sink. After what might be an hour or 10 minutes, a voice returns. When you rise, do so without pulling the dream world with you. You think that's good advice? You file it somewhere in your inner archives, right next to avoid argumentative cheese. Someone gently unwinds the silk from your hands. Someone else missed your face with rose water. The sandbag is gone. You sit up slowly. No one rushes you. The room waits. Eventually, you return to the front desk, where the attendant hands you a small parcel wrapped in pale blue cloth. Inside, a sachet of dried violet petals, a bottle of metronome oil, and a handwritten note. You are more than your sleeplessness. Outside, the fog has returned, hugging the buildings like an old friend. You walk slower now, your limbs warmed by sand and stillness. Your thoughts untied from their usual knots. You're not fully asleep, but you're almost there. Your legs carry you forward almost on their own, now loose, slow, slightly unhinged in that lovely, floaty way that suggests your body no longer cares what your brain thinks. The world around you is soft at the edges. Gas lamps blur into golden orbs, and distant footsteps melt into the hush of wind, winding its way down empty Victorian lanes. Somewhere behind you, the Institute for Rest and Reverie fades into fog. Ahead, a narrow alley curves off the main street like a secret being whispered into the night. You follow. The path leads to a low stone building with ivy curling up its walls like green lace. Its small wooden sign swings gently in the breeze. The Society for Nocturnal Restoration. Below that, a second line carved in fine, almost apologetic script. Because some people just need a nap, you love them already. The door creaks open with a gentle groan, like even it's tired. Inside is an odd little room filled with worn armchairs, blankets knitted in strange constellations, and shelves upon shelves of small wooden drawers, labeled not with ingredients, but with moods. Disappointment at Tuesday, craving for the distant mountains. Lonely at exactly 2:43 a.m. A woman in a patchwork shawl emerges from the shadows, carrying a teacup that smells of cardamom and dusty books. "You're here," she says simply. "Good. We were expecting you." Everyone gets here eventually. She invites you to sit, which you do, sinking into a chair that feels like it remembers your posture from some forgotten lifetime. This isn't just a shop. It's a sleep support society, a place for people who have tried everything and still find themselves awake. Again, wondering what they did to offend their own nervous systems. On a nearby table sits a guest book titled People. Who've been here before you and somehow survived? You flip through. Some entries are notes. Some are doodles of sheep. One simply says, "Tried everything. This helped." Also, I stopped eating sardines after 9 p.m. The woman, who introduces herself as Mrs. Evers, begins preparing a custom tincture. She doesn't ask what's keeping you up. She just watches you for a long, gentle moment, then begins selecting from drawers labeled soft guilt, mild future panic, unearned optimism. Your sleep, she says, isn't broken, just tangled. Victorians, it turns out, were starting to explore the idea that insomnia wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, a consequence of overwork, underlove, or simply being too aware that the stars don't care about your schedule. Mrs. Evers pours the tincture into a tiny quoquo ceramic cup shaped like a seashell. Sip once, then again. Then forget you ever sipped anything. You drink. It tastes of anise, warm lemon, and something indescribably nostalgic, like the feeling of being tucked in by someone who hummed while folding the blanket. You close your eyes briefly. Your limbs sink deeper. You hear the sound of a record being wound up and playing softly strings. Maybe a harp, something slow and sad and comforting. Mrs. Evers moves around the room, lighting a few candles that flicker in time with your blinking. Victorian sleep societies were real. Believe it or not, small, informal circles where anxious thinkers, poets, and the chronically underslept gathered to compare notes. Some called them sleep rooms, others circles of midnight. They were half therapy session, half support group, half potluck. Historians still debate whether these societies were the beginning of cognitive sleep therapy, or just a bunch of polite people getting slowly drunk on herbal wine and reading sad poetry by candlelight. Mrs. Evers shows you a tattered book filled with handwritten recipes and quotes from sleepless visitors. Some are funny. If I were meant to sleep, I'd have been born a garden slug. Others are heartbreakingly sincere. I have not known true rest since my father died. I come here to remember what it feels like to be allowed peace. You sit with that one for a while. Eventually, you ask what the society believes about dreams. Mrs. Evers smiles. We believe dreams are the mind's way of sketching its own apology notes. That feels right. She hands you a small sachet to tuck into your sleeve. Sleep trap, she says. It catches the dreams that try to run away before you can remember them. You thank her. She wraps a hot brick in a towel and tucks it near your feet. The warmth is instant and grounding, as if gravity just remembered you exist. You ask what's in the tincture. Nothing dangerous, she says. Just the things people forget they need. Outside, the sky has softened into a deeper black. Not ominous, just tired. You feel less awake, not quite sleepy. Just less fight in your limbs. Like maybe you don't have to win the night. Maybe you can just walk beside it. Mrs. Evers gives you a parting gift. A tiny journal with a single sentence written on the inside cover. Tonight, you are safe. You step outside and the cold air hits you gently, like a hand brushing your cheek. Somewhere, a cat yawns from a windowsill. A baker opens a shutter and tosses out a pan of ash. A night patrolman whistles a slow four-note tune you swear you've heard in a dream. You don't know where you're going next. You know you're not quite awake, and maybe that's enough for now. You wander through the fog, your footsteps muffled now, not just by the cobblestones, but by the weightlessness that comes when the line between dreaming and waking gets blurry. You pass a clock tower, its face dark. Either it's stopped ticking, or you've simply stopped caring what time it is. Your fingers still smell faintly of that strange tincture from Mrs. Evers' shop. And the tiny dream journal she gave you thumps slightly in your pocket with each step. A part of you is tempted to sit down right here on this damp Victorian curb and just nod off like a stray cat. But another light glows ahead, faint and flickering. You follow it. A weathered iron gate creaks open to reveal a narrow courtyard garden, wild and overgrown, with vines curling along rusted benches and a stone fountain that burbles quietly to itself. The building here is different, more serious. Ivy-wrapped brick, tall, narrow windows, and a placard by the door that reads, "The Bureau of Industrial Exhaustion and Sleep Regulation." And below, in tinier, more bitter lettering, established after the railway collapse of '53, when precisely everyone needed a nap. You chuckle. Inside, the place is strangely bureaucratic, more government office than dream parlor. A clerk in round spectacles peers over a stack of forms and gestures you toward a queue. You're the only one here. Still, you wait. Finally, he slides over a form. Sleep request application. For those overwhelmed by modern industry, guilt, or repetitive steam noises. Victorians, it turns out, were absolutely drowning in sleep disorders linked to the Industrial Revolution. Sleeplessness wasn't just a nuisance, was a national issue. The clanging of factories, the endless shift rotations, the sheer adrenaline of coal-fed modernity had left people twitching, blinking, staring at soot-covered ceilings long past midnight. And the Bureau. Well, this fictional little gem is a stand-in for the emerging wave of state involvement in Restore, at least the earliest. Acknowledgements that too much work without sleep might break more than just machinery. You fill out your form using a pen dipped in midnight blue ink. One of the questions reads, "Are your sleepless thoughts repetitive, accusatory, or unusually focused on gears?" You check all three. A door opens. A woman in a stiff gray uniform gestures you in. "This way to Regulation Room B," she says, as if that explains anything. The room you enter is dim and stark. One bed, one chair, and one box labeled "Noise of the Future." For desensitization, you lie down. The mattress is stuffed with horsehair and maybe unresolved trauma. The lights flicker briefly, then dim. A phonograph clicks on. From its horn comes the sound of a steam engine, then the faint murmuring of typewriters. Then, unexpectedly, the soothing rhythm of distant ocean waves. You blink. The soundscape is jarring at first, but then it starts to flow, clack, hiss, whoosh, silence. Over and over. Rhythmic, hypnotic, not unlike breathing. The nurse returns, holding a glass vial labeled Industrial Quietude Serum No. 7, chamomile, zinc, valerian, and the symbolic memory of unpaid overtime, she explains dryly. Best not to think too hard about it. You drink. It tastes like tea left too long on a radiator. Somehow, perfect. They wrap a warm wool blanket over you and place a small clock near your head, not to wake you, but to reassure you. Its ticking is soft, even constant. Unlike the ticking of your mind, which, hopefully, is finally losing interest. Many in Victorian society believed the pace of modern life had broken something sacred. Philosophers, poets, and even factory owners began calling for rest clinics, countryside retreats, and nervous exhaustion pensions. There were whispers that the future was burning too fast, too hot, and nobody had time to recover between disasters. Historians still debate whether the rise of industrial insomnia was a direct result of coal-powered disruption or simply the dawning realization that you can run forever on tea and sheer stubbornness. Your own mind is quiet now. The sounds from the phonograph shift again. Someone speaking faintly, a man with a Scottish accent reciting a list of obsolete tools in alphabetical order. It's oddly soothing. Adds, auger. All you close your eyes. The blanket is heavier than it looks. You melt into the mattress like molasses down a radiator. The nurse appears at your side again, offering a small cloth pouch to tuck under your pillow. Filled with iron shavings and old clock springs, she says, for grounding. You mumble a thank you. She adjusts your pillow and speaks softly. You're not lazy. You're just not a machine that lands deep. The bureau isn't trying to dazzle you like the tonic shows or lull you with lullabies. This place speaks the language of exhaustion, the real, dirty, grease under your fingernails kind. The kind that factory workers, clerks, and overworked governesses dragged home with them every night, reeking of soap and despair. And this little outpost, in its dim, bureaucratic way, offers them something precious: permission to stop. A faint buzzing fills the air-tiny mechanisms somewhere behind the walls. You hear steam hissing, then sighing into silence. Your heartbeat slows to match the rhythm of that old phonograph, still whispering its inventory of forgotten tools. Brace. Brace bit. Breathe bit. You breathe in, you breathe out. When you rise, because eventually you do it slow, deliberate. Your bones creak, but your shoulders feel less clenched. Someone hands you a stamped certificate. Rest administered. Approved for temporary peace, you pin it to your coat with quiet pride. Outside, dawn is still hours away. The sky has turned to charcoal. Your thoughts have stopped sprinting ahead. They're walking now, at your side, politely, like a dog that's finally been fed. You tuck your hands in your pockets and walk. The streets are empty now. Even the fog seems to have dozed off, slouched low against the curbs. Your breath puffs softly in the cold air, mingling with the scent of coal smoke and distant baked bread. Somewhere, a milkman is starting his rounds. He passes without noticing you either, because you've become very quiet, or because, at this hour, nobody really sees each other clearly. Your feet lead you toward the river. You didn't mean to go there, but the winding streets and your sleepy mind have other plans. The River Thames stretches ahead, dark, sluggish, quiet for once. You lean on a frost-slick railing and look out at the water. It's moving so slowly you can't quite tell if it's going forward or just swirling gently in place. Beside you is a squat, unremarkable building with a sign half obscured by ivy. You squint. St. Dimthan's Rest House for the sleep-paddled and nerve-worn, and below, a fading hand-painted message. No sermons, no clocks, no expectations. You're starting to like this city more and more. You slip inside. It's warmer than it should be. A low-burning coal stove hums in one corner. No reception desk, no velvet showmanship. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring a little until your body realizes it no longer has to listen for anything. An older man in soft slippers greets you with a nod. New to Rest House? He asks, his voice barely above a whisper. You nod back. He gestures toward a hallway. Pick a room. Doors open. You wander down a corridor lined with faded painting sailboats. Weeping willows, one oddly serene depiction of a man sleeping in a wheelbarrow. The rooms are small and plain. Worn quilts. Simple beds, a basin and towel. A window with no curtains, just glass and the soft dark beyond. You pick one. And you sit. This is a sleep sanctuary, less medical, less magical, more human. The kind of place that popped up around the edges of Victorian cities, run not by doctors or showmen, but by those who simply believed that rest was sacred. A response to the growing belief that modern life wasn't built for gentle people or even for regular people, frankly. You lie down without removing your shoes. The bed creaks softly. You sink in. No music, no candles, no herbs. Just the soft ticking of your own heart. You breathe. Victorians were just starting to recognize the mental toll of constant wakefulness. Nervous exhaustion became a term used by physicians, poets, and overworked shopkeepers alike. It covered everything: insomnia, burnout, melancholy. Even that feeling you get when someone asks one too many questions before you've had tea. Some doctors believed the answer was bed rest, not a few hours, weeks, months even. Rich patients were prescribed long stretches of nothingness, no writing, no reading, no conversation. Just food, baths, and forced stillness. Women, in particular, were subject to this infamous rest cure, often confined to dark rooms with no stimulation at all. Historians still argue whether this was healing or a polite form of imprisonment. But here at St. Dimphna's, it's gentler. The rest isn't forced, it's offered. A gift, not a sentence. One of the caregivers brings you a cup of warm barley milk and leaves without a word. The door remains ajar, just slightly. The woman in the next room is softly singing to herself. You can't make out the words, but the melody is slow and round and comforting. Like a lullaby passed down through too many generations to still make sense. You watch the ceiling. The plaster has a small crack shaped like a fish. You name it, Gerald. You feel irrationally fond of him. Time fades. Somewhere down the hall, a grandfather clock chimes, but only once. As if to say, yes, time still exists, but it's not your concern right now. You doze, not a deep sleep, but a kind of safe floating. You're vaguely aware of your limbs, of the softness of the blanket, of a faint creak as someone walks past, but none of it touches you. You're allowed, for once, to not be alert, and that's enough. The rest house has no rules, no formality. People come here when they need to step out of their own story for a while. It's not about curing insomnia. It's about giving up the fight, not in despair, but in defiance. You wake sometime later. No idea how long it's been. Could be 20 minutes, could be 2 days. The room looks exactly the same. Gerald the ceiling fish hasn't moved. You sit up slowly. A folded paper waits on the bedside table. You don't owe the world wakefulness, it reads. You don't have to earn your rest. It's not signed. You pocket it. Outside, the night has faded into the faint blue of pre-dawn. You walk slowly back down the hallway, past the wheelbarrow painting, past the humming stove. The slippered man nods to you again, then returns to his book, titled simply, Dreams I Remembered Too Late. You step into the street. The city is still asleep, but not dead, just ... pausing. The gas lamps flicker one last time before going out. Somewhere nearby, a window opens and someone tosses out the dregs of a teacup. You walk, 1 foot in front of the other. You're not just tired anymore. You're allowed to be. You leave St. Dimphna's behind and let your feet take over, following streets that seem to remember your rhythm. The city is shifting. Still dark, but softer now, shadows pulled long. Rooftops blushed with the earliest trace of morning. If sleep hasn't come for you yet, it's at least walking in your direction, unhurried, coat flapping softly. You round a quiet corner and find yourself standing before something unexpected. A tiny chapel, barely bigger than a stable. Its wooden frame painted a calming shade of blue-gray. A single candle flickers in the window. The door is open, the inside warm and golden. You step in. There are no pews, no altar. Just cushions on the floor, shelves of books, and the low murmur of someone humming a tune that could just as easily be a prayer. A woman in simple robes nods at you. You made it, she whispers, like she's been waiting for you all night. You glance at the placard hanging beside the door. Sanctum Somniferum, a quiet place for tired souls below that, etched faintly. Open all night. Confession not required. This is something you haven't seen before. A spiritual rest house. Not religious in the strict sense, just sacred in its own sleepy way. The woman offers you a place by a small fire. Shh, you sit. She hands you a mug of spiced milk steeped with lavender and fennel, then sits beside you without speaking. Shh, she doesn't ask, what's wrong? She doesn't try to fix you. She just exists beside you, calm, still, human. Victorians often turn to spiritualism in the face of sleeplessness. Not necessarily God, though that too, but the intangible. The belief that perhaps your restlessness wasn't a chemical imbalance or a bad mattress, but a signal from the soul. That sleep was not merely unconsciousness, but a reconnection with the self, or the cosmos, or even the dead. You sip your milk, it's thick, warm, and strangely grounding. On the wall nearby is a framed quote, hand-painted. To sleep is not to forget. It is to remember more gently. You sit with that one for a while. The woman begins to speak not to you. Exactly, just aloud. Soft and slow, as if unspooling thoughts that have nowhere else to land. There are those who dream in color, and those who dream in language. But some dream in silence. Not emptiness, just the kind of quiet that feels full. She looks at you, eyes kind. Maybe that's the kind of sleep waiting for you. You don't say anything. You don't need to. Another guest arrives, a man with sunken eyes and soot on his cuffs. He doesn't speak, just takes a seat near the fire and closes his eyes. The woman retrieves a small box from a nearby shelf. Inside, dozens of folded pieces of paper, some yellowed with age. These are sleep blessings, she explains. Left behind by visitors who found their way out, she invites you to read one. You unfold a slip of parchment and read. I feared rest would steal my time. Instead, it gave it back. Victorians, for all their love of machinery and science, never fully abandoned the poetic. In their world, dreams were still messages. Sleep was still mystical, and the body was a strange, unpredictable vessel, half logic, half longing. Historians still argue whether this balance of science and soul delayed or enriched sleep medicine. You put the slip back in the box and feel something loosen in your ribs. Not sadness, not relief, just space. Room to rest. The fire crackles. The humming returns, now layered with other voices. Soft, human, imperfect, beautiful. The woman gives you a small cloth bag filled with crushed herbs. For your pillow, she says. It won't make you sleep, but it might remind you how. You rise slowly. Before you leave, she presses a small shell into your palm. When you can't sleep, she says, hold this. Not because it does anything, just because it's smooth and cool, and you are a person who deserves comfort. You step back outside. Sky has turned pale gray. No sun yet, but you can smell it coming somewhere just past the horizon, warming up its golden notes. You walk again. This time, not out of habit or desperation or wandering fatigue. You walk because you want to. Somewhere down the street, a shopkeeper yawns and unlocks a door. A baker flips a sign. A lamplighter extinguishes the last flame on his round. The world is waking up, and for once, you don't feel behind it. You feel beside it. You keep walking, though the city is slowly stirring now. The clatter of early carts, the faint bray of a donkey, the whisper of brooms sweeping soot from thresholds. But your pace stays slow, your limbs still heavy in that delightful, law-gravity way that only exhaustion with a hint of relief can produce. You've followed sleep down alleyways and through sanctuaries. You've drunk tonics that probably violated several modern safety codes. You've laid down in a government building and whispered to a ceiling crack named Gerald. And still, the night hasn't quite let you go. That's when you see Ida weather-beaten kiosk nestled between a coal merchant and a print shop. The sign above the door is faded, but still legible in the early light. The archive of dream artifacts below, in smaller hand-painted script. Curios for the sleepless, no refunds, no judgment. You hesitate, then open the door. The interior is musty, warm, and filled with the kind of clutter that would make Marie Kondo quietly weep. Glass jars, folded papers, dried herbs, odd clocks, silver teaspoons engraved with moon phases. The air smells like dust, cinnamon, and mystery. A bell above the door jingles as you step in, and from somewhere behind a curtain, a voice calls. Don't touch the jars labeled Tuesday. They're fragile, also haunted. Naturally, you don't touch the Tuesday jars. An elderly man with wispy white hair emerges from the back, wearing a vest with a constellation stitched across it in silver thread. Sleepwalker or dream hoarder? He asks, peering at you over his glasses. You shrug. Still deciding? Fair, he says, and gestures for you to browse. This place is unlike any other. Not just a shop, it's a museum of dreams. The man explains that everything here was donated by those who finally found rest and wanted to leave behind a piece of their struggle. A sort of emotional sleep archive built over decades. Victorians, it turns out, weren't just collectors of stamps and stones. Many kept dream journals or even sleep cabinets, curated drawers of items they believed helped them drift off. A favorite brooch, a button from their mother's coat, a dried violet from a nap taken during a storm in May. You step toward a glass case labeled Objects of Lucid Respite. Inside, a half-burned candle that someone swore only melted when they dreamed of their childhood home. A tiny embroidered pillow labeled Last Place I Saw Her. A single playing card, the Queen of Spades, with a note. She stopped chasing me in this dream. I finally turned and asked her why. You don't read the rest. The shopkeeper smiles gently. We hold on to sleep in strange ways. He hands you a small locket, the kind that opens. Inside is a photo of a bed. Just a bed. No person in it, no message. Someone said that was their dream man empty bed they didn't feel guilty lying in. You wonder what yours would look like. Historians still argue whether these artifacts are genuine psychological tools, spiritual tokens, or just Victorian sentimentality run wild. But whatever their origin, they're touching. Honest fragments of humanity's long, complicated love affair with sleep. You ask the shopkeeper why people give these things away once they've finally slept. He tilts his head, 'cause when you've found what you were looking for, you don't always need to keep the map. That one stays with you. In the corner of the shop is a donation box labeled Nightmares to be Recycled. It's filled with slips of paper folded in intricate ways. You peek at one. The stares never ended. Another. He knocked. But I'd locked that door years ago. You fold your own. You don't write much, just one line. I was so afraid of forgetting how to rest. You place it gently in the box. Before you go, the man offers you a choice of item to carry onward. They don't do anything, he warns, but sometimes the idea of something helps more than 1,000 actual somethings. You choose a tiny bottle labeled Moonlight, preserved. It's empty, completely, but it feels oddly cool in your hand. Outside, the light is stretching farther now. The roofs are lined with gold. Somewhere, a clock tower begins its slow chime toward 7. The city is rubbing its eyes, but you're not rushing. You've chased sleep all night, and maybe it's still not all the way here, but you're closer. Your thoughts have stopped shouting. Your body has stopped bracing. You're not being chased anymore. You're just walking home. You tuck the little Moonlight bottle into your coat pocket, not because it will fix anything, just because it's a comfort to carry. The city is properly awake now, though still bleary-eyed. Chimneys puff soft trails into the sky like slow exhalations. The bakery on the corner has thrown open its shutters, and the scent of fresh bread hits you like a warm blanket straight from the dryer. A dog trots by with a slice of toast in its mouth and no apparent owner. You don't question it. Your steps feel slower now, but no longer sluggish, more like deliberate. As if your body has remembered how to walk without needing to chase anything. You pass a pair of schoolboys throwing stones into the gutter, a milk cart being unloaded, and a lamplighter leaning against a wall sipping tea from a chipped mug. He gives you a slow nod. Still up? He asks. Still going, you reply. He raises his mug in a sleepy toast. You keep moving. Soon the road narrows again, curling toward a part of town that seems somehow older, quieter. Even the crows sound drowsy here. You pass a gate, half swallowed by ivy, and a small stone marker just beside it, engraved with tidy serif letters. the quietorium for those who've forgotten the way to sleep. And below, almost comically small, established Tuesday, still open. You smile despite yourself. This city never runs out of rooms for the tired. The gate opens with a sort of dignified squeak that suggests someone oils it lovingly. Beyond lies a small courtyard garden filled with weathered benches, low hedges, and a central fountain shaped like a closed eye. The sound of water trickling over stone is steady, soothing, and vaguely hypnotic. You sit. Finally, here, no one greets you. No one brings tea or slips you a tincture. This place is for people who've already tried all of that, who have given up on solutions and are simply looking for space, not answers, permission. Victorians had a word for this kind of bone-deep weariness: melancholia, or sometimes spleen if they were feeling dramatic. It wasn't just sadness. It was the ache of existing in a body that wouldn't slow down and a world that wouldn't let you. The quietorium, fictional though it may be, is a tribute to the lesser-known corners of that era's sleep culture, the places where people didn't go to fix insomnia, but to let it pass through them, like weather, like grief, like fog. You lean back on the bench. A breeze picks up. Somewhere nearby, a door opens and shuts. You don't turn to look. Instead, you listen. Birdsong, faint and hesitant. A distant bell tower, marking time you no longer need to keep. Your own breath, in and out. Victorian doctors were divided on the cause of chronic sleeplessness. Some blamed diet, others mental overstrain. Still others believed the problem was excessive imagination, which, if true, would make you deeply guilty. Historians still argue whether this diagnosis was tragically misguided or accidentally profound. Because what is insomnia, really, if not imagination refusing to shut up? Your mind drifts. Not unpleasantly. You remember things now with strange clarity. The warm weight of the sandbag on your chest at the sleep asylum. Mrs. Evers wrapping your hands in silk. The whisper of the word reverie. It doesn't feel like a linear memory. It's more like flipping through a photo album someone else arranged. But there's comfort in the order, even if it isn't yours. Across the garden, a man sits sketching in a notebook. You catch glimpses: pillows, windows, the shape of a moon caught behind clouds. Maybe he's trying to capture what rest looks like. Maybe he's just drawing things he misses. You get it? You close your eyes, you don't sleep, but you don't resist sleep either. You just rest. There's no pressure here, no protocol, no tincture waiting to disappoint you. Just the gentle presence of others who understand what it means to spend the night pacing thoughts like narrow halls. Eventually, the bench grows too hard and the morning too bright. You rise. At the garden's exit, a stone plaque catches your eye. You are not broken. You are simply awake at the wrong time. There's a small wooden box below it, filled with folded notes. One is addressed simply. For you, you open it. Inside, tonight. Again, I'll be tired, but I'll also be kinder to that tiredness. I hope you will too. You fold it carefully and return it to the box. The city is golden now. Sunlight paints rooftops in warm oranges and soft whites. The fog has burned away, and the streets are bustling with people who clearly didn't spend the night chasing rest through dreams, tonics, and memory gardens. But they also didn't find the quietorium. You step back onto the street, not quite in the world, but no longer outside of it. You feel strange, not fixed, but less frantic. And that might be all rest really is. You turn from the quietorium and begin your walk anew. But this time, there's no destination, no mystery shop pulling you forward, no cure to chase. You walk simply because your body asks for motion, slow and meandering, like the breeze combing gently through the hem of your coat. The city, in full daylight now, doesn't feel as cruel as it did at midnight. Maybe it's you who's changed. Maybe, just maybe. The weariness has shifted from something gnawing inside you to something folded neatly and tucked under your arm, still there, but quieter. You find yourself on a broad promenade lined with iron benches and tall, swaying trees. The river appears again, silver and bright now, as if it's finally woken up, too. A few children toss pebbles into the shallows. An older man feeds ducks with precise, philosophical crumbs. You sit. The bench is still cold from the night, but the sun presses gently against your shoulder. It doesn't try to fix you. It just exists beside you. Across from you is a low building made of sun-bleached brick, its windows open, curtains lifting lazily in the breeze. No sign, no name, but something draws you in. Inside is a gallery. You step carefully across creaking floors. The place smells of wood polish and forgotten paper. The walls are lined with drawings, some delicate, others bold, but all depicting the same thing: sleep. A woman curled in a library armchair, book still in hand. A child asleep in a rowboat. An old man snoring on a park bench, hat pulled over his face. A dog in a sunbeam. A stormy night seen through a window with an untouched bed waiting. This is not a museum of science or medicine. This is a gallery of what sleep feels like when it finally arrives. The curator, a quiet woman in her 60s, wearing a shawl dotted with embroidered stars, nods as you enter. She doesn't speak, just gestures toward a small wooden placard on the wall. The archive of sleep's memory collected dreams, portraits, and rituals of rest from those who found peace after years of wakefulness. You move from piece to piece. Each one has a small card beside it. Some simply say, "Found sleep here." Others are longer. One sketch of a woman sleeping under a kitchen table reads, "After 3 days awake, I lay down in the place I felt safest as a child. I don't remember falling asleep, only waking up with the morning light on my hands." You swallow that one slowly. Victorian culture was beginning to accept that sleep was not just a medical matter, but a cultural one. Where and how people slept said something about their class, their trauma, their routines, their fears. Sleep was both necessity and narrative. Historians still argue whether these intimate sleep rituals were a form of rebellion, tiny sanctuaries carved into a world that rarely allowed vulnerability. The next room is filled with donated sleep objects: patchwork quilts, cracked teacups, pressed flowers, even an entire rocking chair. None of it valuable, all of it precious. You pause at a child's drawing pinned to the wall: stick figures, a sun, a moon, a crooked bed. At the bottom, scrawled in pencil, "This is what I dream when no one is mad at me." You sit on a bench beneath the drawing. You stay there for a long time. A few visitors pass behind you, their footsteps hushed, as if honoring something fragile. Eventually, the curator returns and offers you a small bundle wrapped in linen. Inside is a smooth stone with a tiny hole worn through its center. "A dream anchor," she says. "Found on a beach near Brighton. Someone left it behind with a note. This helped me stay where I was." You pocket the stone. You thank her. You step out once more into the sunlight, now fully awake, though you don't resent it. You don't feel robbed of sleep. Not anymore, because something has shifted. You've spent the night tracing the edges of sleep, not capturing it, not forcing it, but relearning what it means to welcome it. You realize that in the process, you've created your own ritual, your own map. Not a cure, but a companionship. And somehow, that makes all the difference. As you walk, you begin to rehearse what you might do tonight, when the lights dim and the silence grows thick. Maybe you'll lay that stone under your pillow. Maybe you'll tuck the moonlight vial into your palm. Maybe you'll just remember Mrs. Evers's words: "Your sleep isn't broken, just tangled, and maybe, just maybe, tonight we'll find one less knot." The sun is warm on your back now, not harsh, not rushing. Just there, steady, indifferent, soft. You walk through the final streets with the deliberate pace of someone who has survived something. Not a disaster, exactly. but a long and silent negotiation with the self. You pass just beginning to open. The hiss of kettles, the clink of saucers. Someone yawns so hard they drop their napkin. It's comforting. This world has woken, but it didn't wait for you. And for once, that doesn't sting. You realize it's been a full night, maybe longer. Your body has carried you across a dreamlike landscape of whispered shops and sleepless sanctuaries. And while sleep never landed fully, you've come to understand something that evaded you before. Rest and sleep are not always the same thing. The final building waits quietly at the end of a cul-de-sac, nestled under a huge willow tree that dips its fingers into the gutter. There's no sign, just an open door and a lazy breeze drifting through it. You step inside. It's a house, not a clinic, not a gallery, just a home. Faded rugs, a clock ticking without urgency, a blanket half folded on the arm of a chair. No one greets you. And yet you feel welcomed. This is what the Victorians called the last retreat, not a real place, but a phrase that floated through their diaries and correspondence. A space, physical or mental, where they went when sleep finally refused to arrive and panic was no longer useful. For some, it was a physical retreat, a distant aunt's guest room, a walk in the hills, a bench under a favorite tree. For others, it was something subtler, a memory, a sound, a ritual. Something to hold until their thoughts slowed enough to tip, finally, into rest. You sit on the sofa. The cushion sighs under your weight. On the low table in front of you is a tea tray. Not fresh, just used. 2 empty cups, a spoon resting lazily across a saucer. Someone has already rested here, and they've left the silence behind for you. A small card sits beside the tray. Handwritten. This is the part where you don't have to do anything. You let your arms fall limp, your legs stretch out. Your eyes flutter, not from exhaustion, but because blinking feels good. You sink into the cushions, not sleep, not quite, but a stillness, a truce. Victorian culture was strange about stillness. Simultaneously obsessed with industriousness and terrified of what silence might reveal. And yet beneath all the medical journals and moral warnings there was always the undercurrent of this quiet longing. To pause, to retreat, to vanish for just a few hours into softness. Historians still argue whether that longing made them weak or wise. Outside the house, the world has moved on. You can hear carriages now, barking, a child complaining loudly about the injustice of oatmeal. And still, you stay. You close your eyes just for a second, and this time, something gives. Your thoughts don't run. They stretch out beside you like tired cats. Your heartbeat slows not from fatigue, but from permission. You might fall asleep here. You might not. But either way, you're not fighting anymore. You are allowed to be still. You are allowed to be warm. You are allowed to be held by a room, by a chair, by your own breath. You're not alone. Somewhere in this house, someone has already drifted off, and someone else has woken gently, stretched, and gone on their way. The cycle is ongoing, ancient and forgiving, and you are now part of it. A quiet lineage of the sleepless those who walk through the night not looking for pills or potions, but for peace. And if sleep comes next, it will come not as a reward, but as a companion. Not earned, just allowed. You curl your fingers around the bottle of preserved moonlight in your coat pocket. You smile, faintly. You made it. You didn't fix anything. You didn't fail. You just made it. And now, it's time to rest. You're still here, which means something inside you, some quiet part, was willing to slow down with me tonight. And maybe that's enough. The world outside might be humming now. The light might be creeping under your door. The birds might be testing out their morning voices. But your world, in here, doesn't have to match theirs. Let yourself linger. Let your limbs melt deeper into the bed, or the couch, or wherever you've chosen to rest tonight. Let your thoughts settle like dust after a storm, each one finding its place, slowly, without being forced. Breathe in, just a little deeper. Breathe out, a little slower. There's no rush, no task waiting, no expectation. Just this breath, this moment. Remember the soft clink of Mrs. Everest's tea set, the glow of candles in the dream shop, the hush of the quietorium garden. These places may not be real, but you walked through them. You were brave enough to wander the night and kind enough to carry your weariness gently. You deserve rest. Not because you've worked hard enough, not because you've solved every problem. Just because you are a person and people get tired. So now, let the words blur. Let the silence stretch. Let the space around you become lighter, looser, dimmer. And if sleep comes, let it take you. You've done enough. You've been enough. Good night.